this comic doesn't have a dick-sucking contest or a gangbang, I'm going to be pretty upset. For those of you that don't know, the Insane Clown Posse, or ICP for short, is a rap duo from Detroit, Michigan. The members, Shaggy 2 Dope and Violent J, put on these personas of psychopathic clowns, rapping about murdering people in outrageous ways. Their lyrics are filled with humor that, I guess, one could say, is juvenile, but their fans, called Juggalos, are insanely loyal and can't get enough of it. And looking back, it's kind of wild how close I was to becoming a Juggalo. I mean, I grew up poor, white trash, around addicts, loved Heath Ledger's Joker, and worst of all, I'm white. Boo! There was a time where the only music I had access to was whatever my mom loaded onto my MP3 player, and one of these was the entirety of the Insane Clown Posse's Great Malenko album pirated into one 54-minute song. I mean, she even got me an ICP shirt. I was given that Backyard Wrestling 2 PlayStation 2 game, which features ICP as playable characters, which is so odd looking back, because she didn't even like ICP. She didn't like rap music. However, with all of this outside influence from the universe, I was never down with the clown. Maybe if I continued recreational drugs after middle school or never had my Eminem phase, I would be sitting here in Juggalo face paint talking about these comics as a fan rather than someone with, I guess, morbid curiosity. And I mean, the iceberg for ICP goes really fucking deep. They've been in the game for over 30 years, so there's a lot of stuff to talk about. They have over 100 projects under their belts, a lawsuit with the FBI because they labeled their fan base, the Juggalos, as one of the most dangerous gangs in America in 2011, thousands of stories about the gathering of the Juggalos, their feature-length film, but I need to narrow down this discussion on the topic of today's video, and that is, of course, their comic book series. Similar to what I said in my Wu-Tang Clan video, ICP having their own comic books makes a lot of sense. Their aura and presentation is very fantastical, so I'd honestly be surprised if they never put out a comic book. From what I can gather, they released a little over 20 comic books from 1999 to 2002, published by Chaos Comics. And there's a consistent theme throughout the first 6 ICP albums that these comics draw an inspiration from. These 6 albums are kind of one big conceptual experience, and each album represents a different character, a part of the dark carnival mythos. Like I said before, not super familiar, I'm just kind of reading off their Wikipedia page, so I apologize if I get any information wrong. But according to that, the Dark Carnival is described as Violent J as sort of a river of sticks type thing, but instead of the ferryman guiding you to the underworld, it's like a fucking jester dude making balloon animals out of your intestines or something and then sending you to hell.
Trying to stump me, eh? Ta-da! This doesn't look anything like Robert Frost.
Like I said, each album represents a different character that sort of acts as that ferryman analogy, and as a whole, they make up the Joker's playing cards. These characters include the Carnival of Carnage, the Ringmaster, Riddlebox, the Great Malenko, the Amazing Jekyll Brothers, and the Wraith. Each of these albums expands on the character and the lore of the character that they're named after, like the Amazing Jekyll Brothers representing the 9 circles of hell, or the Great Malenko acting as sort of a Satan figure, tricking people into sinning. What's as hilarious as it is fascinating is that apparently throughout the first 5 albums of this dark carnival theme, they hint that some big reveal is coming with the 6th album, and that'll change everything. And when that final Joker's card is revealed with the album The Wraith Shangri-La, the duo reveals that the hidden message throughout their music this entire time, throughout the carnage and clown laughs and carnival music, that the hidden message is Christianity and to follow God. If all of this isn't a good foundation for a comic book, I really don't know what is. I haven't listened to them in like 15 years or whatever, so I can't speak on this. But from what I've gathered, critics say that this execution of this deeper meaning leaves a lot to be desired. There's clowns and death and stuff like that, but the message to follow God and hell and purgatory gets lost in translation. As much as I'd love to listen to all of these albums and gather my own opinion, this video needs to come out at some point, and I, desperately need to fucking talk about these comics because they're like surprisingly competent and very entertaining. These comics include The Ups and Downs of Wicked Clowns, The Amazing Jekyll Brothers, Raise the Deserts of Glass, Hallow Wicked, The Halls of Illusions, and a 12-part miniseries titled The Pendulum, and each was bundled with a promotional CD, and this was eventually collected into a trade. There have also been some promotional limited run comics released, like the Shaggy 2 Dope illustrated 1994 Wicked Clowns and the Ash Can Mr. Johnson's Head. I'm sure there's been other promotional comics, but these were the only two I could find, and we're not really going to be focusing on those today. As for these comics and their creation, there's not a lick of information of how they came to be. There's credits, of course, but I can't find a single person associated with these comics, ICP or otherwise, discussing them. The first two issues I mentioned have a letters column, but that's just discussing their music and tour. Even browsing through the Juggalo subreddit, there's barely a mention of these comics. I was lucky enough to find scans of these, so whoever posted those, I thank you, because I really didn't have an idea for a Halloween video. Who was lucky enough to bless these comics with such amazing art and writing? Well, every issue besides the two promotional comics I mentioned was written by Jesse McCann. He's written quite a few comics, mainly other licensed books such as The Simpsons comics and various Cartoon Network properties adaptations. However, the artists weren't as consistent. The pencilers include Robert E. Brown, credited as R.E.B., who has a difficult career to catalog because there was also an artist named William Robert Brown, and their work gets mixed up. Jerry Beck, who appears to have only worked on this, a Crow spinoff, and a Halloween adaptation, and Gerardo Sandoval, who seems to be the only person still working in comics. A couple more things before we jump into reviewing and summarizing the comics. First, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that other YouTube nonsense. It really helps out. But also a trigger warning for violence, domestic abuse, murder, etc. We're starting off with the first insane issue called The Ups and Downs of Wicked Clowns that sort of acts as an origin story for these mythical characters of Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope. The issue begins with prologue number 1, The Carnival of Carnage, and we see this man whose skin looks like a little too small for his body, complaining about his ungrateful wife that he just abused. His wife grabs a knife, planning to get some revenge on her husband before these two shadows emerge, and they talk her out of it. They say that if she goes through the murder, her children will grow up with no parents because she'll be thrown in jail, and they're like, let us kill the bastard. They then send like a swarm of knives at him, turning him into a delightful, very comical pincushion that I cannot show for this because it is very graphic. I understand and I applaud them for going through with killing the husband so the wife doesn't have to, but like when the cops show up, are they really going to believe her when she says that these two mystical paranormal clown saviors killed her husband and she didn't? I doubt it. I think her ass is still going to get thrown in jail, unfortunately. We continue with prologue number 2, called The Ringmaster. We are met with a guy named Bubba, who is the shot caller of the city. Nothing gets done without his approval, boasting about how everyone fears him. As he talks about opening up a nightclub, he notices that someone has already done so. Furious about this, he rushes and demands to see the owner. And then he meets the owner and gets his ass sliced up. The comic continues with prologue number 3, and at what point do these stop being a fucking prologue? I feel like with multiple of them, they sort of lose what a prologue is. This prologue features a little boy who is beaten up and robbed by a grown-ass man. The police, his teachers, the principal, no one helps. Until he finally catches a break and receives a gift from the two shadowy figures you saw earlier. The bully robs him of that as well, and snatches his jack-in-the-box, and as you could have guessed, the shadow creatures come and murder this guy as well. And the prologue ends with Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope giving a similar box to each of the people that refused to help the boy before. So the principal, his teacher, and the police. We are then shown not a prologue, but a flashback. and I'm not really sure what the difference is in this context. The flashback answers the question that I'm sure we've all been wondering. How did Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope become these mystical, wicked clown wizard type guys? Well, as the two are riding through Detroit on their way to a show with their homies in the back seat, they come across an opposing crew who has been ruining their promotional posters all around town, and they start kicking ass. They eventually are able to perform their show, and the leader of the crew they just beat up, Mr. Lomax, arrives with a bunch of goons, and they start jumping ICP. Then the crew takes ICP and throws them into a sewer, and then starts filling the sewer with this like toxic waste type shit, and from this goo emerges the spirit of the Dark Carnival, and he recruits Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, and the spirit turns them into the recognizable, lovable clowns we know today. We are then brought to the present day where Mr. Lomax is talking about handling the insane clown posse. We find out that he's some big shot at a record label, and the ICP are told by the mystical entity that Mr. Lomax is going to help spread the message of the Dark Carnival. By, I guess, Lomax offering them a record contract or something. They sign this contract, and Mr. Lomax is like, haha, you've been tricked. Now you guys will never be successful rappers. Who would have thought? He just tried to murder you guys. So they summoned the Great Malenko, another one of the characters I mentioned earlier, and saw the dude in half. We then get a really messy and confusing page of the clowns wreaking havoc on their journey to find Mr. Lomax's boss. They find the bigger bigwigs and intimidate them into nulling the contract they just signed. They then throw these guys out the window, sending them to hell, where they are tortured for all eternity. Although, it looks like in this panel that they don't really seem to mind. And then it ends with ICP driving into the sunset, looking for a new record label that can distribute their wicked clown message and, help them become bigger Dark Carnival guys or whatever. Right off the bat, I'm kind of pleasantly surprised. What separates this from the other slop I've read for this channel is that it's not trying to be something it's not. It understands how ridiculous of a concept this is, and it turns it up to 11 and rips the fucking knob off. This comic understands that it's the equivalent of a B-tier horror movie, and it's just here for a good time. I apologize if this analogy is a little too on the nose, but it's similar to seeing a clown perform. You don't go to the circus and expect to think. You go to see someone throw a pie in someone's face and turn your brain off and laugh at the absurdity of it. There's definitely some so bad it's good, but being so absurd with everything, art included, definitely has some charm to it. I know it's not going to take much for me to stop enjoying this, but for right now, I didn't really mind the first issue. So let's see what issue 2 has in store. As we can see, the series kinda doesn't thrive on its covers, unfortunately. Issue 2 opens up at a diner, where a waitress that also happens to be a sex worker is shouting at her son as she's trying to holler at the sheriff, saying, "Here's your coffee, honey. It's saucered and already been blown." Then these two goons rocking white pride and a Confederate flag skull cap come up and sit next to the sheriff. It's funny that this comic isn't the first one I've covered on this channel to feature racists, but it is the first one to have them as the bad guy in the comic. It's kind of wild. We find out that the sheriff hired these two goons to get rid of a reporter. Then Shaggy 2 Dope and Violent J speed into town in their paranormal convertible. They roll into the diner, and then the waitress starts flirting with the clowns, who are debating if her Mondo Gazungas are real or not. The racist goons start harassing the clowns. They ask if they're real clowns, then come to the conclusion they're from one of those fancy French circuses, a pair of homosexual, a word I can't say but I've been called my entire life, clowns. They bicker some more, and then Violent J tells Shaggy 2 Dope that they have to perform a funny show. The waitress's son from earlier exclaims how excited he is to see these clowns perform, but then his mom just starts fucking pummeling him. I actually can't tell the age of this goddamn son because he looks a different age in every panel. And as Violent J pulls her off from abusing her son, we finally get the answer to the question, her tits are fake. Then everyone starts fighting, and Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope do their best absolute Batman impression and pull out these giant battle axes and just start fucking swinging. After killing everyone, the amazing Jekyll brothers appear and turn everyone killed into juggling balls. balls. The narration says that the Jekyll brothers begin juggling these soul-filled juggle balls back and forth. However, each juggle ball gets heavier with each sin that the soul committed when it was alive, so the Jekyll brothers can't juggle it forever. When they get tired, they drop the balls, sending the imprisoned souls to hell. However, the narration continues, saying that if your soul is free of sin, then it becomes light enough to float to heaven, called Shangri-La, which is exactly what happened to the waitress's abused son. We are then presented another flashback, this time showing the first appearance of the Jekyll brothers. Shaggy and Violent J are driving down the road as a couple of truckers try to run them off the road. Then the driver of the semi gets assassinated by someone in the distant bushes. A slight discrepancy here, but there's a panel where we see the assassin's point of view. He has the driver in the sight of a night vision scope, but then when we see the assassin right after he pulls the trigger, there's no scope on his gun. Literally unreadable slop. Thank you guys for watching. The truck swerves into the clown duo, sending them in the semi off the cliff. We find out that the assassin is hired by the little brother of the executive that was killed by Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, Mr. Lomax. Then this green mystical clown we keep seeing appears, resurrecting the duo and giving them the 5th Joker card, which is sort of like a power-up and allows them to summon the amazing Jekyll brothers. The comic continues with Mr. Lomax's little brother that I just mentioned killing the security guard that failed to protect his older brother, and then says he's celebrating the murder of his brother's killers. And in order to celebrate, he rents out an entire theme park for his employees and their families. The clowns arrive to the park to find the person who hired the assassin, Mr. Lomax's little brother. They're stopped by an employee who asks them to perform for their son. They then chop the father's head off and laugh about it. I feel like this kind of contradicts the oppressed savior ideology that they were setting up before, with the abused wife and the abused kids and stuff like that. But I guess traumatizing a child by killing his father for a few laughs is okay. We then arrive at the theater where the big boss they're hunting and a bunch of his employees have gathered to watch a show. The duo are on the stage and open up this toy box. Then a bunch of murderous toys are unleashed onto the crowd as Violent J performs the ICP song, The Toy Box. The big boss tries getting away, and as he's doing so, he comes across a gift box, and for some reason, he decides to open it. Did he not just see a bunch of murderous toys kill his entire company? It doesn't matter because the toy impales him in the face. The comic ends with a one-page epilogue of the clowns getting their revenge on the assassin that tried to murder them, saying that they're going to go after the assassin's brother now. A lot of, killing brothers in this comic so far. It's kind of a weird theme. I'm really interested in the creation of these comics. ICP aren't credited as writers, but I'm sure they gave some ideas or some vague creative direction for the creative team to expand upon. I just want to know if the people who worked on this comic were ICP fans before working on this, or if they became fans in the process. I imagine the writer just sitting alone in his room, locked in there, been up all night because the script's due in a few hours, just listening to ICP on loop, and then you see his family in the other room hearing the muffled fucking carnival sounds and hatchet murders and stuff like that as they're trying to enjoy their breakfast. The next issue opens with this purple demon dude monologuing about how he had manipulated the sheriff that died last issue into doing his evil work. And then in the next panel, he goes from purple to a snot green. Insert Dr. Doofenshmirtz meme about if I had a nickel for every time I covered a comic that had a color-changing demon, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, The demon continues and resurrects the sheriff. He asks the sheriff who killed him, and he informs him that it was the insane clown posse. And because the demon got everything he needed out of the sheriff, he makes him dead again by popping his eyeballs out. He then disguises himself as a cop to go find the clowns. I don't know, I'm not some powerful color-changing demon, so forgive me if I'm stepping out of line, but I feel like a police officer isn't the best thing to go undercover as. These murderous clowns, just killed a sheriff. They're killed a bunch of people. They're probably just hiding from the police. I don't know, maybe a sword swallower or a fucking juggler acrobat dude would be better to go undercover as, but what do I know? Like I said, not a powerful demon. The comic continues and does this weird narration thing. So on the last panel, the demon is monologuing or whatever, and then on the next panel it has two narration boxes where one is the demon's monologue continuing, but then the next one is just generic establishing information. So I assumed as I was reading that both of those were from the demon's point of view, but that doesn't make any sense, and it's not really a big deal, but it kind of slowed down the pacing of the comic. Anyways, ICP tracks down a lawyer who they say is getting bribed to help defend people who commit grape. But is that really a bribe? Isn't that just kind of how the profession works? But ICP's reasoning for murdering this lawyer is that the lawyer knows the people that he's defending are guilty. How does he know that? I mean, even if the evidence is damning and his defendant is, 100% guilty and it's really obvious, it's still up to the judge or the jury to make that final decision. I just feel like a judge would have made a lot more sense, or if they show the lawyer, intimidating jury members or whatever, it would make more sense, but he's just doing his job. It's unfortunate that fucking assholes and monsters get a defense, but that's, kind of how the legal system works, unfortunately. There are shady lawyers that exist. I'm fully aware of that. And I know that this is, further pushing that these clowns, really only kill bad people, except for traumatizing that kid by killing his father right in front of him. But it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, it would have just been so easy to just swap this guy for a judge. Anyways, the cops show up and the ICP summons the great Malenko to handle them. We find out that the lawyer that was just killed was the mayor's lawyer, and he was recently acquitted from an accusation made by a woman. He tells his assistant to dig up some information on this woman to discredit her and help him, in the poll or whatever. Even with this context, I think the judge would have made more sense. Just have the dude bribe the judge. That's all you need. The comic continues with the mayor's security staying watch at his place, and one of them is peeping on his little sex party. They then hear a sound in the woods, and then Shaggy jumps out and kills one of the security guards. The mayor finds out about his security breach and calls a man named Kilnor for backup. We also get to see some nipple. ICP makes their way to the mayor, slaughtering everyone in the process. Also, throughout this entire comic, the Insane Clown Posse's slang and word choice is so fucking ridiculous that I can't help but chuckle. In this instance here, Shaggy asks Violent J if he likes the way that he's killing people. Violent J responds, "Primo bitch slapping Shaggy. Primo." I don't really know how to articulate how goofy this is. Another example is in a few panels after they kill the mayor's top dude in one shot. One of them says, "Can Mayor McFatass Chicken Neck Boy come out and play?" It's so crude and so not clever that it's really refreshing in a very odd way. You'd expect them to try to have these badass quips or whatever, but they talk like they're trying to hit a quota for cursing. On the phone with Kilnor, we find out that Kilnor helped pull some strings to get the mayor elected. Kilnor leaves the mayor to die until he figures out that it's the ICP that's after him. And we then find out that Kilnor is the color-changing demon from earlier. And the issue ends with the demon summoning two other shadow demons to kill ICP. These are none other than the rap duo Twisted. Now, those of you that aren't aware of Twisted, and I'm sure it's most, let me take you on a little journey and summarize a few quick Google searches and some interviews. ICP started a record label called Psychopathic Records and signed a rap duo named Twisted. According to Violent J, Twisted's success was all due to ICP and Psychopathic Records. ICP pushed them a ton, apparently taking years of touring and promotion, because in the beginning, Juggalos weren't fucking with Twisted. They have a collab album together. It's clear that these guys were as tight as you can be. However, they hate each other now, and it's really not super clear as to why. There have been rumors and tension building between Twisted and ICP for years, and while we do have some of the details, we don't really have the full story. So ICP signed another rap duo named Axe Murder Boys. I feel like I'm pulling these names out of a goddamn Call of Duty Xbox 360 lobby. Apparently, Twisted wanted nothing to do with the Axe Murder Boys, seemingly hated them with a fiery passion by Violent J's account. Twisted left Psychopathic Records, created their own record label, then one of the members of the good old Axe Murder Boys cheated on his wife with Violent J's niece, got her pregnant, and got the duo kicked off Psychopathic Records. According to Violent J, the literal next day, Axe Murder Boys posted a picture with Twisted saying that they just signed to their label. And we only have Violent J's account of this, and this isn't even discussing what initially started the tension between the two duos. So I apologize if I got any of this information wrong, but for now, let's jump back into the comic. I have a feeling that because this was written before the beef, Twisted is going to turn on the weird demon guy and join forces with ICP to spread the message of the Dark Carnival. The next issue is the first issue of the 12-part Pendulum miniseries I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure why they decided to jump into doing a miniseries at issue 3 of this overarching story. If I had to guess, it's because they couldn't come up with any more cool, clever, clown-themed names. I briefly touched on this earlier, but each of these individual comics also came with a CD. And all of the pricing I've seen for these comics are pretty nonsensical. I've seen individual comics go from $15 to $60 online, and it being sealed or having the CD still seemingly doesn't do anything to change the pricing. What I'm trying to say is that if there's any Juggalos watching, don't pull the trigger on the first thing you see. Do a little bit of searching because you will find something at a better price. What's pretty dope is that with each CD that came with the Pendulum comics, putting them together, it kind of creates this like puzzle splash page type thing. As for the content on the CDs, each one came with its own single track of unreleased music. As a collector of nerd shit myself, I love this dedication that they had to their fans, just wanting to give them something a little extra. I just wish I was an ICP fan, but I digress. The issue picks up right where the previous one left off and has the ICP running from the police after they just killed the mayor. We then get some kind of humorous narration by Shaggy as he's profusely bleeding. He says, I ain't being negative and shit, because when I'm bleeding like a stuck pig, I think of my body as half full of blood instead of half empty. Didn't realize Shaggy was such an optimist. I could totally see Spider-Man saying something similar as his friends are watching him die to try to liven the mood. But, without the dialogue of a middle schooler. Shaggy sits down, and Violent J says he's going to get the cop that shot Shaggy, telling him to do the tush push. And we get this way too detailed close-up of Shaggy. Like, way too detailed. Then Shaggy narrates that Violent J knows that Shaggy has a hard time remembering the steps to the tush push. I'm sure that's some sort of ICP, like, lore information, something from their songs. I don't know what it is. So we cut to some cops who are looking for ICP, and we get this really weird set of panels. They come around a corner, and then they smash into another cop, and it doesn't even look like they're trying to swerve out the way. The perspective is really odd, and it's just kind of an ugly set of panels. After the cop gets ran over, Violent J quips the very badass, "We be feeling our Wheaties today." Just fucking cartoon characters. It's ridiculous. We then go to the demon from earlier, and he's talking to Twisted. And while it's only a couple pages, the dialogue here really slows down the pacing. We get needless exposition about how Twisted are like these half-alive, half-dead, necromanced shadow demon things. Also, the art throughout these pages leave a lot to be desired. With drawing ICP, I feel like the artist can get away with hiding a lot of the details because of the clown face paint that they're wearing. But with Twisted here, they just look really weird, wrinkly, and misproportioned. I mean, what's the deal with this fucking hand right here? Violent J cranks the riddle box for assistance, and emerges the Riddle Master, who says that he's not going to help Shaggy 2 Dope's wounds. The Riddle Master says that the only way Shaggy will not be crippled for the rest of his life is that if his wounds are touched by the hands of a holy person. Remember those Christian themes I brought up earlier? So Violent J takes Shaggy to a church. Then a priest pulls out a goddamn pump shotgun, threatening to blow their brains out. Violent J snatches the shotgun out of his hand, and then the priest goes on about saying that this is all just a test from God, and how he used to be in a gang as well, and that he shouldn't judge because only God does that. The priest even says that his name is Jesus, and Violent J comments about how great of a name that is. Subtlety of a fucking hatchet to the face. I mean, it's probably pronounced Jesus, but still. The priest asks Violent J what if he fails healing Shaggy, and then Violent J responds, "You won't fail. You have faith in God, then let that power channel through you." I just read Kingdom Come, and it's really interesting going from that with its religious themes to this with its religious themes. Which one is better? I think we all know. Twisted arrives outside the church, and they talk about how they have to savor killing ICP because they can't be in the mortal realm for very long. In the moment that they do kill ICP, they're going to be sent back to hell or whatever. We got a real Scud the Disposable Assassin situation going on here. Inside the church, the priest is a vessel for God's powers and does heal Shaggy, bringing him back to life. Shaggy starts looking over his healed injuries, and I think the artist took a little bit too much creative liberty here. Then, as the ICP are leaving the church, the drops again some more subtle wisdom by saying, "Despite your evil tongue's appearance and actions, I can't help but feel you are somehow involved in God's holy strategy." Once they leave the church, Twisted starts shadow stepping all over the place and kicks ICP's ass. We then get some very confusing action, and then through the slog of slaughter, ICP finds out that Twisted does not like the light. They're like the Tooth Fairy from Darkness Falls. You guys like all these references I've been pulling out of my ass? And then, once their weakness is exposed, Twisted scurries off into the darkness, saying that round 2 will come soon enough. We then reach the last page of this issue, where we see the priest being overrun by demons. I'm sorry to leave you guys with such an intense cliffhanger, but this is unfortunately where this video has to come to an end. I do have the scans of the next 11 issues of The Pendulum, as well as some other one-shots they've done, but unfortunately some of the pages are messed up. Admittedly, I'm sure I could fix the mistakes and make it readable, but if you couldn't tell, this comic is starting to lose its charm very quickly. This is also like a Halloween-esque video, and I wouldn't be able to finish it by then if I did go over every issue. And you know, I feel like some Juggalos might not know about the comics, and I don't want to spoil everything, and they can go check out the rest for them and have a fun time and, you know, be surprised by shit. However, for me at least, there's apparently a limit to how much ICP I can intake. Which is unfortunate because I wasn't lying when I was saying that I kind of enjoyed the first 2 issues. However, the introduction of the religious themes and the lore and Twisted really made this comic start to take itself too damn seriously. Something as ridiculous as this comic should just have shit happen without explanation. With a fantastical comic such as this, it's better to drip feed lore rather than shove spoons down the throat of the audience. I know they didn't go off the deep end with exposition like Wu-Tang Clan did, but even the amount that they did was too damn much. There's also the elephant in the room about 2 vulgar psychopathic clowns that love to murder being these vessels for gods, preaching and stuff like that. However, I can see Juggalos really enjoying this, and I hope I was able to shed some light and let some Juggalos know that, hey, there's some ICP comics if they didn't. Go check out my other shit, go read something good, like, subscribe, whatever.